Hello friends, welcome to our next episode of Sandy Wars, our video series on military and strategic affairs. As promised, we are back again today on the 1962 Indo-China War in the Nefa sector, in the Tawang sector. Today we have with us one of the last remaining survivors of that war. It's a matter of pride, though albeit a somber pride. So many have faded away in the years that have passed by. We have with us Major General Krishen Khorana, retired of 1 Sikh, who was with Charlie Company 1 Sikh and the battalion adjutant and quartermaster during those halcyon days of October 1962. Major General Khorana, we welcome you heartily to our program Sandy Wars on behalf of all our viewers and the nation, sir. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much. It's nice to be talking to you.
Our viewers today will be extremely interested, and it will be a matter of honor for them that you are with us. We don't have very many of those officers left or soldiers left. Major Khorana will brief us about his first-hand experience about the Tawang battle. But before coming to the role of 1 Sikh on the Bumla-Tawang axis, he will also tell us about one of the most glorious episodes, one of the most tragic and glorious episodes, which was the story of Captain Mahabir Prasad of 1 Sikh, who was the first officer from the army who was deputed for that fateful patrol, to the Namkachu Thagla area. And his patrol report is quoted often in any and every account of the Namkachu battle. We will now go over to Major Khorana, and he will take us through this entire story of how the patrol went and the story of Captain Mahabir Prasad. Over to Major
Khorana. Our battalion, that is 1st Battalion Sikh Regiment, we had moved from Jaipur to Missamari in May 1961. And that is the time when the forward move of troops onto the McMahon line was being contemplated and thought of. However, after about 6 months or so, our battalion was moved to Drangzong, which was midway from Missamari onto Tawang area. There was no volatile action on the part of anyone or anything. So we moved to Drangzong and waited for our turn to move and relieve 19 GR who were in Tawang. This move took place in the month of June 1962. We moved to Tawang. And thereafter, the battalion got down to the process of settling down as well as to carry out a lot of reconnaissance of the area of operations. Before we moved away to Drangzong, just before that, in the month of May, that is the time when physical movement of Assam Rifle troops, platoons worth, each a platoon, they were tasked to move onto different points on the McMahon line and established platoon posts so as to put up the Indian flag all along the supposed border between China and India.
So this was in 1961.
This was in 1962.
1962.
And in May 1962, that is. And Mahabir, we sent out 2 patrols from our battalion. 2 officers were deputed from our battalion to lead these patrols. One was Mahabir. He was one. Second was Captain Ramraj Singh. He was to go on to another axis, which was beyond Sela or onto east of Sela, direct side. Mahavir left the battalion on this patrol somewhere in the month of May. And I think, if I'm not wrong, it was on 15th of May that he left with this patrol, and he was briefed by the Assam Rifles at Bomdila, and there was no connection of this patrol or his task or its operational viability that was there discussed with the brigade or with the commanding officer. So it ultimately boiled down to an officer being provided to lead the Assam Rifle platoons to the area of where they were to establish, or they were to find the area of where they were to be established, and that's it. So the battalion knew nothing about what Mahavir or his platoon was doing once he left the unit lines.
I think one sepoy, Mohinder Singh, went with him from the battalion.
He went with a couple of people. He went with a radio operator of his own, and he went with what we famously called as the Batman in those days. Other than that, he was just with the Assam Rifles, and he took that platoon out on patrol. They were kitted.
And SIB, there were also two SIB operatives.
Yes, there were two SIB operatives, and they were supposed to be the experts as far as the alignment of the McMahon line is concerned. They were supposed to know exactly where the McMahon line was, and they were also people who had the intelligence of the area in which they were to operate and the area in which they were supposed to go and establish themselves. And they had the know-how and they had the intelligence, and they had been briefed by their bosses of the IB. And so Mahavir went off, and I think it took him about good 20 days from Tawang onwards to ultimately land up where he at the area of what we now know as the Dhola post. Now, Dhola is a misnomer. It was not a post as such. Mahavir carried out extensive patrolling of that area on either side of the McMahon line, on the Thagla Ridge, as well as on the Hatungla and the Sangdar area. Right from then Zimetang, Lumpu, Karpolas and all. He did a lot of reconnaissance to go up to Sangli and go up to the tri-junction of India, tri-junction of the border between India, Bhutan, and Tibet. Now, that the post was basically to have been established in the area of the tri-junction between these countries. And he finally settled for the area of Dhola next to the river, or close to the river, just above the river. And he mentioned it in his patrol that this position was more convenient at that point in time from the point of view of administration of those people and water being a main component. It wasn't possible for a small detachment of that nature to be tactically sighted and to fend for themselves. If they were to be so sighted, they probably would have needed at least about 100 plus porters and ponies to be able to support the administration of this platoon. He finished that task of establishment of the post, handed it over to the JCO of that platoon, and returned to the battalion, which by now had moved to Tawang. And he was back, I think, somewhere around about the 20th of June 1962. I think somewhere around about that time.
30th of June.
In June 1962, in June,
End of June,
after having established. I beg your pardon?
On the 30th of June, sir, he came back.
Yes. So he returned he finished his patrolling. You're right. He came back by 30th of June 1962. He was back in the battalion. Now, when he came back, And I had also returned from a duty, and I was also in the battalion at that time. And our permanent adjutant at that point in time, Major, the later Colonel A.G. Inamdar, he was posted out to IMA as an instructor, and Mahavir was the obvious choice, and he became the adjutant of. He took on the adjutant's job. Ramraj Singh, who had not been able to establish his Assam Rifle post due to administrative reasons, he could not be supported by air. He had also returned to the battalion. He was posted off to an NCC job somewhere in closer, in somewhere Riva or someplace, and he went off there. And uh, uh, I was told to take on the job of the quartermaster. In the meantime, our company commanders, uh, who were there with us till as long as we were at Jaipur, uh, many of them, two of them were posted out because they were low medical categories, and in those days, low medical categories could not be moved to field areas. It was quite a difficult situation when we got new company commanders who had not been with the troops for quite some time. However, that's a story apart and for another day. But by the time we were at Tawang and Mahavir had come back, and we started reconnaissance duties and patrols in a big way, whether it was towards Bumla, whether it was Nukmerong, going towards towards the route which takes off directly from Bumla and goes to Gishila Pass, which is just above Jang, and other areas, then going off towards Kenzamane and those areas for patrolling purposes, or in short, generally all our operations, the headquarters 7th Brigade was there, and so was.
I think your voice broke a little, sir. Your voice broke a little. Can you
I
repeat?
beg your pardon, sir.
Your voice broke a little in between. Your voice broke a little.
Is my voice all right now?
Yeah, it's fine. Now, can you repeat the last part, sir? The last part.
What I was saying was that 7th Brigade, were commanded by Brigadier John Dalby, they were also at Tawang, and the battalion 9 Punjab was in the process of being inducted in at that time. Now but we were there till almost as a single battalion, almost till about the month of July or so. There was nobody else, and we but we were in Tawang, acclimatizing and training. Ahead of this time, it was sometimes, if I recall correctly, it was on 8th of September. It was a Saturday or I think 9th of September. It was a Sunday, if I recall. We were just in the morning at about 8:30, 9 o'clock. Mahavir and I, we were just sitting and chatting when all of a sudden he indicated that I should keep quiet. He had an important call on the telephone. And the call was from the brigade headquarters telling him that the post which he had established, Dola Post, had been surrounded by the Chinese. Now, it was the first time that a communication on something, on an issue, on Dola Post, it came through the army channels from the brigade to the battalion. Till now, Dola Post existed as an Assam Rifles problem, and we had nothing to do with it. So Mahavir, he said, well, he had nothing to do with it either. But then, after another about 2 weeks, when 9 Punjab had already come in, they were told to move towards Dola, towards Namkachu area, And the threat seemed to be a little more than just academic, and they were told to move as quickly as possible. Now, it was a difficult going for 9 Punjab, and Brigadier Dalvi was literally taken off the helicopter, going home on a holiday, and told to get back to Tawang. Vanna and GR almost had boarded their train and going off for a peace station. They also were told to about turn. And the Rajputs, who had come away from Walong area, they were told, well, now your new role is somewhere in the area of Tawang and ahead where the Chinese are.
Two Rajputs.
And two Rajputs. Yes, two Rajputs were told to also move towards this. So there were lots and lots of movement. There was no road communication worth its name. There was no possibility of a build-up of the ammunition stocks or rations or whatever. It was just human beings told to move and being pushed into areas and strengthening of this, or bringing up the strength of troops in the area of Namkashu. In the meantime, our battalion was told that you would have to move ahead onto and occupy defenses opposite the Bumla, in the Bumla sector. However, that's another story, which you, I'm sure, are aware of. But it was during this period, somewhere in the middle of September, when the GOC of Fordev, he was at, I think, probably Lumpo or thereabout. And somewhere then, it is at that time when General Call, he helicoptered and also landed up there.
October, sir. That was October
And
5th. General Call.
I beg your pardon?
General Call reached there on 5th October, sir.
Yeah, he reached on 5th October. You're right. But earlier than that, in end of September, that is the time when General Naranjan Prasad was finding it difficult to explain, as he'd never seen the area, never seen the ground. And the others, they also had not seen the ground or the area at all. And the only person who seemed to have actually been physically on the ground was Major Mahabir Prasad.
Captain.
Now, now that's another thing I'd like to correct you.
Okay.
He was captain when he went to establish the post.
Oh.
In June 1962, he was, and went with the posting away of the officer senior to him, he had been promoted to the acting rank of major.
Okay.
This was one of my notes. I thought I'd tell you that this needs a bit of a correction.
Yes, thank you, sir.
He was a major at the time when he died.
So little is known,
Right.
about that part. It's a tragedy.
Yeah.
So little is known about the hero. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Sir, do you have a picture,
So
photo of Major Prasad with you? You told me, sir.
Yeah, I have a photograph of Major Prasad. It's actually a photograph of three of us, but I'll focus it on Major Prasad.
Yeah, please.
Just a second. Can you see it?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. He's on the left of the screen.
Yes, he's on the left, and on the right of him, on the left of him is Major Ramraj Singh, and on extreme right is self. But this is
Can you bring it a little lower, sir? Can you bring it a little lower?
Are you okay?
No. I mean, his face is getting cut off. So the photo.
His head is getting now it's good. Now okay?
Yeah. Now it's
right.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you, sir.
You got it?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Right. Now, so to resume, General Naranjan Prasad was, they said, well, the only person who seems to know the area beyond the Namkachu is Mahavir. So he said, he's your nephew. Why don't you get hold of him? As simple as that. Incidentally, Mahabir was the nephew of General Naranjan Prasad. I don't know if
Bhatija.
you.
Nephew as in Bhatija.
I beg your
Bhatija.
pardon?
Nephew as in Bhatija.
Bhatija, yes, yes, Bhatija. Bhatija, oh, Niranjan Prasad, he was the middle brother amongst the three. The youngest one was General Har Prasad, who later on became the vice chief of the Indian Army. He was from the Armored Corps. It was Mahabir's father was in the civil. He was in the corporate sector. So Mahabir then all of a sudden was requisitioned from the battalion and asked to reach Namkachu. So he marched all the way to explain the ground or guide them on the terrain evaluations and on the ground. He reached there somewhere around about the 5th or the 6th when General Call was also there, I think. And he briefed them, whatever he knew. He gave out all the details of the terrain on the other side of the enemy, because he'd walked all over that area, and the complete pictures of the bridges which were there on the Namkachu, the routes which he had taken. So he briefed all the commanding officers, the brigade commander, and the GOC on all these aspects. Now he was on a loose limb. What to do with him? And in the meantime, after the 5th or the 6th or the 7th, things started hotting up in that area. And for little references and confirmations, Mahabir, they kept him there for that purpose. So that if patrols went from 9 Punjab or from 19 GR, he was able to help in the headquarters and on their briefing.
Sir,
so that is the purpose.
According to Brigadier Injo Gakhal, he said that battalion had never debriefed him before this. It's so unfortunate that he had not been debriefed before, when it might have been useful in the planning stage, and he was pulled in now.
You see, that's very interesting thing you have brought up, Sandeep. Mahabir was not even debriefed at the brigade headquarters or even at the divisional headquarters. His report, a copy of which went to the div headquarters, was probably just put on some shelf. It was an Assam Rifles matter, an IB matter. The army just had nothing to do with all the patrols, Assam Rifle patrols, which went there. They directly reported to the IB, and IB was in touch with Malik, Mr. Malik, and Mr. Malik was in touch with the CGS, or now who later on became the new Corps, General Call. Army had nothing to do with it. There was no debriefing ever done of Mahabir, and never were they told that Mahabir had put down in his report, which I am very, very sure of, in his report, that the post which he had cited, which had been confirmed by the IB rep who was with him, that it is on our side of the McMahon line, he reported that he felt that he was on the other side of McMahon line. So when at one stage, when the whole balloon went up, at the div headquarters in 4 div, the GSO1, nowadays you have Colonel GS, the GSO1, a gunner officer, he made a very rude statement when asked, look, why didn't you tell us that the grid reference was given where he had cited the post? He says, Mahabir is an infantry officer. I thought he may not have read the map right.
Oh my God.
No. That is the kind of indifference which existed at the ground level and the headquarters levels, who were sitting some 100 miles away or a couple of 100 miles away.
Who said this, sir?
This is a fact.
The Div GS said this, sir? Who said the GSO said this? That Mahabir
is the GSO1 of 4 Infantry Division.
He said this.
GSO1 of 4 Division, Infantry Division. Nowadays, it is known as Colonel G. He is the senior most staff officer at the level of the division. And I don't wish to talk about his name and this gentleman or what happened to him thereafter. But what I've said this, you are recording it. It's all right. This is what actually happened. That he was not only not briefed, his report was also just taken as though if it's some sort of a document which had no value, and yet it is top secret today. That is the beauty of it.
And then he was called. And when the balloon was about to go up, at that 11th hour, he was called to go and brief them.
Yeah, he was called at that hour. He was called, and he once after the 10th of October, when I think the first bullets started flying around, and when I think General Kaul was also there, if I'm not wrong, he was there and he stayed on there for a couple of hours or whatever, and I think he then decided to go to Delhi to consult as to what should be done. He was now convinced that they had better more than they could chew. And it is then when Mahabir said, "Can I go back to my battalion?" He says, "Well, you can go back to your battalion. I'll hang on for a couple of days. In the meantime, we'll attach you. You'll stay with 19 GR." So that is how he spent his time with 19 GR till his end came. That's how he was. That's how where he was killed. That was a platoon of the Gurkhas, 19 GR, and he died with a machine gun in his hands.
So was he in the battalion headquarters, sir? 1 by 9 battalion headquarters?
No, he wasn't in the battalion headquarters. He was in the battalion headquarters. He walked out of that place because they were attacked and they were losing a lot of casualties in 19 GR. So he went into one of the trenches, of the LMG trenches, and the gun number had been shot. So Mahavir took on the role of a gunner and started firing at the Chinese. And well, he got a burst. He also died there. So that is how he went and he died. And of course, the whole brigade, it capitulated. Whole brigade, it capitulated within a matter of hours. It was no longer 7 Infantry Brigade. Was not an entity thereafter. Nobody knew where they were. Nobody knew where the GOC had gone, and nobody knew where anybody else was. There was no command and control.
Sir, where 1/9 GR deployment is concerned, one company was sent to the location near the brigade headquarters in front of Rongla Nala, between bridges 2 and 3. Two companies were behind the Dhola post, on the slopes of Sangdhar, and one company, actually, two platoons were on Sangdhar, and one platoon was between Bridge 5 and Sangdhar. That was the deployment. I was wondering, where was he? Was he behind Dhola post, or was he near Rongla Nala, near the brigade headquarters? I was wondering, sir, if you knew.
I would not be able to tell you exactly where he was at the point in time when he got into that post and trench. I don't know about that.
Okay, sir. So must have been one of those locations. Yeah, must have been. So either way, it was a futile passing away. So after that, after the 7th Brigade was wiped out almost, even though I think, 4 Grenadiers and 9 Punjab, some people could come back, Shakti Bridge, because that one platoon of 13 Dogras, which had been airlifted there, they held on, as a rear guard, and they allowed these people to escape. 2,000 people escaped over Shakti Bridge. So one Sikh by that time was deployed on the Bumla axis, right?
The whole of one Sikh was deployed on the Bumla Tawang axis, and the deployment was one company, which was the D or Delta Company, commanded by Lieutenant Haripal Kaushik, and along with him was Gurcharan Gosal, Captain Gurcharan Gosal of 7 Mountain Battery. They were of Delta Company that was deployed at Tongpengla. Ahead of Tongpengla, Haripal sent out a platoon to function as a screen and early warning, and a screen which is very close to, just pretty close to the Bumla itself, just a mile or so away. Then behind
Just give
Tongpengla
me
Ridge.
1 second, sir. Just give me 1 second. Sorry, sir. Sorry.
Yeah, welcome.
Yes, sir.
Then another 3 kilometers behind the Tongpengla Ridge was this Milak Tongla area. Milak Tongla Ridge was there. Over there were 2 companies with the battalion headquarters, C company and A company.
So your company was
And
there, Shali company.
yes, I was there doing. I was since Mahabir was not there. I was holding his post as well as my own, and also moving up and down to the company, which was pretty close to the battalion headquarters. And
But
then there
adjutant come quartermaster. Adjutant come quartermaster.
Come quartermaster, come company commander.
Come, there are 3 jobs.
Yeah, 3 jobs.
So no sleep. No sleep for you.
No, I'll tell you the reason. I'll get to the reason why something like this happened. Then one company of ours, which was in an area called Samasto Pamdir, it was further towards the east of Milak Tongla.
Bravo company.
And
Bravo.
that was Bravo company.
Bravo company.
Commanded by one Major Edilji, and he had with him a second lieutenant as his company officer, now who later on became Lieutenant General, B.S. Randhava. And now that was the basic deployment of the company. Our battalion rear was in Tawang, with all its stores and everything was located there. So was the brigade headquarters. It was there. The brigade, this brigade headquarters that I've talked about, it was an ad hoc brigade headquarters. It was it was being commanded by the CRT, Brigadier Kalyan Singh, in the infantry role. He was the CRT of 4 infantry day. And the Dogras, not the Dogras, the 4 Garhwal was also fetching up by then. So they were also to reinforce the Bumla sector and also hold Tawang. And so that is how this brigade was known as this 4 RT Brigade in infantry role. And Brigadier Kalyan Singh was that time our brigade commander. Now, so that is how the deployment was.
And for history buffs, and I think the entire nation knows his name, Subedar Joginder Singh of 11 platoon. He was at the forwardmost position of the battalion at IB.
You're right. He was the platoon. Haripal had pushed out Joginder's platoon to the ahead in the IB Ridge area, and there one little aside to his deployment. Now, Subedar Joginder, he was the Subedar to be the next Subedar Major of the battalion. Okay. So that had a lot of effect on him, in the sense that he said that, no, I have to do better than the others. And he was a very fine JCO, because when I was posted to the battalion as a second lieutenant, I was put as the understudy to Subedar Joginder in his platoon in Delta Company. So I had a lot of regard for him, and I knew him rather well as a professional and as a good JCO that we
So he was your ustad. He was your ustad.
Yes. Subedar Joginder was he was a brave man by any stretch of imagination. He belonged to Moga area, and he was a good personality, a good trainer, and in every way a very fine JCO. And I'm sure if he had lived, he would have made a very good Subedar Major of the
Can we mix it up with a bit of Hindi so that a wider audience, they would be interested in understanding this particular episode? But this has wide emotional resonance all over India. ये सुबेदार जोगिंदर सिंह की कहानी ये घर घर में लोगों को बच्चों को पढ़ाया जाता है, स्कूलों में पढ़ाई जाती है, उनकी वीरता की कहानी, उनकी परमवीर चक्र, ये सब लेके बहुत सारे कहानियां बाजार में फैली हुई है, पर ऑथेंटिक जो एक्चुअल घटना इतिहास जो है आप ही से मिल सकती है। सो सुनने को आया कि 11 प्लेटून जो फॉरवर्ड पोस्टिंग में पोस्टर में था और आईवी इंस्पेक्शन बंगलो वाली रिज जो था, जो मेरे ख्याल से वो 2 किलोमीटर पीछे था बुमला पास से, और वो एक अपना एक सेक्शन हवलदार सुचा सिंह सेक्शन हेड थे, उनको आगे भेजे थे, वो असम राइफल प्लेटून के साथ बुमला पास में उनका पोजीशन था जिस दिन अटैक
Yes,
आई।
that is true. That is true. To give as early a warning as possible, plus also to be a link with the post at Bumla itself, and they were the forward eyes of Juginder, and that's what they were there for. Now
Did
this
you know Sucha Singh?
platoon, this,
Did you know Havildar
I
Sucha
beg your
Singh?
pardon.
Did you know Havildar Sucha Singh?
Yes. No, I was in Delta Company for a good 6 months. My first 6 months of my service, I was with the not 6 months, 9 months of the first 9 months. I was with that company,
सर आप बाद
and
में
so
मिले थे
I
सुचा
know.
सिंह को? आप बाद में मिले थे सर सुचा सिंह को? वो तो सही सलामत वापस आ गए थे वो।
Yeah, there were four people who. There were 3 or 4 people who returned from that platoon, who were pulled back. They were pushed back while D Company was still fighting. These people they returned, and uh, they came and they asked me, because I met them. I said, "Why have you come back? What is the problem?" He says, "How you've come to collect more ammunition?" I said, "No, no more ammunition for you. The platoon has fallen." He said, "No, sir, we have to go back." I said, "No, you can't go back. There is no more. Your platoon is no more." So I said, "Yes, you now stay put." So I told them they had to stay put there. They had come back to get ammunition. They had not come back for any. They were not survivors as such, as thought of.
So they were the real heroes, sir. I mean, ये सुनने से रोंगटा खड़ी जाती है, sir. I mean,
Yes, they were heroes. Nobody talks of Mahabir, that he got his Mahabir Chakra, where he got it, how he got it, why he got it, who was he. Nobody knows as an officer what kind of an entity he was. These are the missing links in the stories, and the missing links in our war histories all over the Indian Army.
sir, even Lieutenant Haripal Kaushik, sir, आपके colleague, मेरे ख्याल से ऑफिशिएट कर रहे थे, क्योंकि सीनियर ऑफिसर्स आप जैसे बोले कि 2 कंपनी कमांडर्स को फॉरवर्ड पोजीशन में भेजा नहीं गया था।
I tell you what, you see, at that time, the second in command of the battalion, he had gone off on senior officers course to Mao. We had Major Edilji commanding Delta Bravo Company. Charlie Company had no CO. We had still a CO, an officer was to be posted. One Major Lahiri, who later on took on Alpha Company, he was still to be under posting. We had one Major Durjan Singh, who was in the battalion, but he had been sent to the rear because he was unwell. Now, and Captain Ramraj Singh, Major Ramraj Singh had been posted out to NCC. Major Inamdar had been posted out as an instructor at the IMA. Now, these were all experienced officers who should have been in the battalion when the war came. See, we were all with people with 3 years or 5 years or 4 years of service. These were the senior officers who were unfortunately not on ground when they were needed. And this was a state not only in First Sikh, but in many other battalions, that the middle piece officers were all on staff.
आप लोग जूनियर बता रहे हैं अपने आप को, पर the kind of battle you people gave, that one Sikh junior officers, because Captain Lieutenant Kaushik, he could extricate his company with rear guard duty and speak and span with all equipment with Captain Gosal's contingent, and he came back to Sela, I mean, almost unscathed, sir, after rear guard duty.
No, what you're saying, there is a little more to it. Now imagine that Haripal Kaushik, when he came back, you see, he was a hockey champion. He played 4 Olympics, incidentally, 4 Olympics. Now he was posted to the battalion, but spent a lot of his time in the regimental center with the center regimental hockey team playing for the services in the tournaments. Now, he came back just a few days or a month or so before he was deployed on Tong Pengla as a company commander, as a lieutenant. There was no officer there. Now, he did his job as a lieutenant with very little ground experience and not having been with Delta Company as such for any length of time. But he bonded. He bonded beautifully and he did a very, very fine professional job as a company commander. Now,
He got a Veer Chakra.
that is okay.
He got a Veer Chakra, sir.
Yes, he got Veer Chakra. When he got the Veer Chakra also as an immediate award. By the time he got Veer Chakra, we were already deployed at Sela. But you know, Sandeep, the Sela situation was even worse as far as officers is concerned. Major Adilji, who had come back from Bravo Company Commander, who he developed what is a high altitude paraplegia. He was evacuated, and Major Durjan Singh was evacuated with hemorrhoids, and Major Gurdeep Singh, who was second in command, was still in Mao. He wasn't there. So it is just second lieutenants, and captains who were there with us. We were there, and that's it. And yet there is one more personality, Sandeep. You'll be surprised whom not many people in our army would know. Was a regimental medical officer. He was a gentleman called Captain Muhammad Bakar Ali. He was one officer who was loved in the battalion, and people, when he went past anywhere, there were some who would touch his feet. He was that good and that popular. He was posted out when we were posted at Melak Tongla, when the battalion was there. So I remember going up to the COI, I said, sir, he's lucky he's going back, so let him go back. He's posted out. So this gentleman, Bakar Ali, says, no, I don't wish to go. He said, no, it's your luck. You've been posted out, so go. That's it. Now he went to a field ambulance, which got pushed back into Sela once before the second phase of the Chinese operation. We saw him, he didn't go anywhere, he came straight back to the battalion because the RMO who had been posted in his place fell sick and he was evacuated also to Tezpur. Now we got Bakar Ali back as our doctor. It was a sight to see. The men, they were so happy to get their Dr. Saab back. Now that is an aside I've told you, because I do want that this gentleman's name must feature in the battalion's fight all over and what happened. But in between, now after a couple of days his posting came, we again went and begged the CO, please let him go. He has done his bit and we got a new doctor. However, we leave that at that. We'll also leave the fact that the officer situation in the battalion was very, very critical when the Sela operations had come on. Getting back to Tong Pengla and Milak Tongla, a very successful withdrawal, a battle had been fought. We were ordered by Brigadier Kalyan Singh that, look, we cannot stay put on this axis. You will carry out a withdrawal from here and come back to Tawang, fall back on Tawang. Sandeep, it was a withdrawal as it was taught in all the schools of instructions. It was an orderly withdrawal, a very fine withdrawal after a proper defensive battle fought in the area of Tong Pengla. We fell back that night to Tawang, and Tawang was in total shamazal.
Did you come to Tawang or Sela?
No. We first withdrew to Tawang.
Okay.
See, we were at Bumla to Milak Tongla to Tawang. Tawang was the main ground of 4 Infantry Division in that area, in its incoming sector. From Tawang, where all the battalion brigade headquarters, the battalion rears, all those people, they were still there and the whole civilian population of that region was concentrated in that area. The political officer's office also was in Tawang. Yeah, APO's office, that is Assistant Political Officer, a gentleman by the name of Mongia, Mr. Mongia. Mr. Mongia also incidentally was from Rajdip earlier on. So from Tawang, we were told, what do we do? There is no place to hold because there was total chaos and everybody was simply on the move back. So Brigadier Kalyan Singh gave orders, you fall back to Sela and between Senge and Sela. So the battalion collected whatever stores it could. And incidentally, our mortar platoon collected a mortar which was not in order. It was lying. They said, no, we cannot leave even our disused mortar over here. They had that pride in them. They picked up that mortar too, 3-inch mortar, and we came back, and we then withdrew from there and marched back over Sela to Senge.
So let me get the chronology right. Let me get the chronology right. As per records, you withdrew from Milkom Tangla at last light on 23rd. At last light from
yes.
Mila. You fell back on Tawang, and you were in Sela by 11 a.m., 11:00 next day morning, 24th.
Yes. It's
continuous.
Exactly what.
Continuous.
It was a continuous. Yes. A continuous march. In fact, all I can say as an aside is that my knees went for a 6 in that year, and now I'm without knees with replaced knees. I have replaced knees, not my original knees anymore. So I'm saying that it was a very tough going, and we just kept going, and that's all. We just started withdrawing from Milak Tongla and back to Sengezong by the afternoon the next day.
How did you manage, sir, at last light from Milak Tongla, at in the dark with all stores, all equipment, and you had that mountain battery, that 7 battery was.
Yes. They also
with the Chinese.
No, Sandeep, I'll tell you what. There's a little gap in that narration. Haripal's company was ordered to withdraw during daytime, by day. He was told to start withdrawal at about midday. From Tongpengla. By that time,
3:30.
By that time, by
3:30
he left
Tongpengla. Sir, 3:30. The records say he left Tongpengla and he arrived at the battalion post of Milak Tongla, and you people left at last light. From Milak Tongla.
We after we got the Delta company to go through us, after we got the Bravo company also to go back, then we withdrew the Alpha company, then battalion headquarters, and then Charlie company. Last of all, we withdrew to Tawang.
Oh, you were the last. You were the last.
Yes.
Oh, yes, I was under the impression that Haripal's Lieutenant Haripal's company, Delta company, was the last from Milak Tongla.
No. Haripal's company was the first. Then was the B company, Bravo company. You see, it is always the front troops who are in contact who we make them withdraw first. And the people who are holding at Milak Tongla, they were to face in case there was a requirement. And once these two companies withdrew, then Charlie and Alpha company, they withdrew.
Thank you for putting the record straight. Because the records carry the wrong version. That D company withdrew at 23:00 hours from Milak Tongla. I mean, that's a erroneous version.
No, that is wrong. That is totally wrong. And they withdrew they were the first, and after last night, they withdrew from Milak Tongla.
So you were last.
We all were.
Charlie was last.
Well, no, there was one company. See, a rifle company was behind the battalion headquarters. That is, Alpha company was there. They withdrew. Charlie company, then battalion headquarters, then Alpha company. So they withdraw. There's a particular sequence in which you withdraw and you occupy ground, and you. By that time, at a place called Pankantang, behind Milak Tongla, between Tawang and Milak Tongla, there's a place called Pankantang. Now, a company of the Rajputs, 4th Rajputs, had fetched up there to assist in the 4 Garhwal rifles.
4 Garhwal.
4 Garhwal rifles. Fort Garhwal, they were in the process of coming up to Tawang to occupy Tawang. So one company of that battalion had come up to the area of Pankantang to cover the withdrawal of first Sikh.
So your hand is covering the camera.
So that
Sir, your hand is covering the camera. You have to remove the hand, sir. Your hand, yeah. Now it's good.
okay.
Yeah.
Now, as I was saying, that a company of Fort Garhwal was located at Pankantang to cover the withdrawal of first Sikh and the mountain battery, which was with us. We withdrew to Tawang, but as I said, in Tawang, we received the orders that no, Tawang cannot be held now anymore, and you are to withdraw to beyond Sela. So we withdrew, just carried on, collected whatever extra material that was lying in our rear, ammunition and the extra mortar which was there, unrepaired mortar. We collected whatever we could and marched on to Sela. Now, people were going with their weapons. They had the pouch ammunition and they had their sleeping bags, whoever had carried one. And they were on their 2 feet and we withdrew.
Sir, did you leave behind civilians in Tawang, sir? Were civilians there in Tawang when you withdrew?
No, civilians at the chaos was total in Tawang. All the civilians that got mixed up with the soldiers. And it was one mixed column which went on that hardly a road, but still call it a road. It just went along, trudged along that road up to Jung and beyond. And at Jung, beyond the, what is that river, the Tawangchu, at Jung, the bridge, once we crossed the bridge, we met our brigade commander, Brigadier Kalyan Singh, early morning, must have been the first 6:30 or 7 in the morning. And there he was sitting on a rock, shaving. So it was interesting to see a brigade commander sitting out in the open with a mug of and his brush and shaving away and getting him cleaned up. So that was the brigade commander's big bungalow there, and doing his work. He was a great man, Brigadier Kalyan Singh. A very, very great man, a very fine commander, and I would say a man with a big heart and a big mind.
I was talking to the family member.
Go back to.
Sir, I was talking to the family member of an SIB officer at that time, a local SIB officer, whose descendants are now in Tawang. He was telling me, from the family law, that he had an offer of being evacuated by helicopter, being an SIB officer. But he said, no, we will go by foot. And his entire family evacuated by foot to Dirang, sir. On foot, they went to Dirang.
Oh.
So that kind of morale everyone had.
Yeah. Yes. That is. See, up to that time on this axis, on the Bomla Tawang axis area, we were quite okay. We were not into any great no depressions of any kind. Shall we put it that way? So after we came back to Senghe, Senghe is a little below Tawang, below Sela, just a little below Sela, where it was actually Senghe was an administrative base for troops ahead of Sela. There was a DZ over there, and the place was known as Mehboob Camp. So our battalion concentrated over there, below Sela, other side of Sela and below Sela. And it was a sight to see all the men. They sat down, they retied their turbans, got their dress correct. We carried out the inspection of each and every man, got his feet right, got his weapons right, got everything right, and we were trying to get ready. And incidentally, I must tell you, by that time, all rations had gone. There was nothing to eat. And just lived on with whatever we could get from
morale
wherever.
Was high. Morale was high, sir.
So,
morale was high.
I beg your pardon?
The morale was still high.
Yes, morale was still high. I'll tell you what. Then when we found that the rations had finished, now I was also the quartermaster. So I said, all right, went down to Senghe and asked the Senghe officer, I said, on the DZ, where is the food? Where is the atta and where are the blankets and where are the other things? He said, well, the ASC officer who was there, a senior man, he says, I have very little left in the store here, but there are a lot of drops which have been missed, which missed the DZ. It is lying all around. Well, we went and we collected that. We got that. Got our men to feed whatever they could. But by that time, the Indian Air Force got into the act, and the Fairchild packets, they started dropping at the Sela Pass where that Mani Lake is. There's a bowl there. There's a big flat area just ahead of Sela. So they started dropping food stuff. And so there was nothing much to talk about or say
When you
that
had gone up to Bumla,
we were badly off or anything.
so when you originally went up to Bumla, I think some weeks back, were you properly attired? Did the ORs have proper footgear? Did they have winter wear?
No, 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 we did not have any. In those days, the most popular thing, the paras, they have that jacket which gets strapped from underneath also. And the men, they just had their jerseys. A few had parkas, coat parkas, the Indian coat parkas. At least I would say about 30-40% people had coat parkas. Otherwise, it was just jerseys, OG jersey, cotton, or some had the other shirt, which is woolen shirt, which is there. Cotton shorts, boots were the normal military boots. Socks were the normal this thing. So everything was just soggy, wet, and it was cold. I can just say that. It was just simply cold. And I remember having I had gone for a course to Mao, so I was myself wearing a para jacket which I had modified with a little lining inside. So men were roaming around with their clad in these kind of clothes. Proper clothes, winter clothing was not there.
So did you have, sir, because of that, a frostbite or a trench foot or things like that when you?
No, the lot of men who there are very few cases of frostbite, but there were some cases of mild chilblains which were there, and up to the time of Sela, coming back to Sela and getting redeployed at Sela, there were no cases of chilblains and there were no cases of frostbites and no cases of pulmonary edemas in the unit. The only casualty we had was this commanding officer of Bravo Company who got into paraplegic hysterial problem, and he had to be evacuated. Other than that, the doctor was evacuated. Rest of the people, they were in perfect fine fettle. They were all fit, absolutely fit.
By the
ready
time
to
they
fight.
acclimatized, I think, because a lot of troops, in the Namkachu Valley, they became ill because of the exposure without proper gear.
Yeah, because the troops who had gone down, like Gurkhas had gone down, the Rajputs were coming up afresh, the Grenadiers had come up afresh. So all these people, they had problems, you see, over there at Namkachu. But we were an acclimatized battalion, so we had no problem that way.
So thanks a lot, sir. We have learned of certain things which are buried in history. Once more, I would like to reiterate that Major Mahabir Prasad's has been, I think Major Mahabir Prasad's story has been unfairly suppressed. I mean, I can say that, you may not be able to say that, but we can say that as civilians. Very few people know his story. Very few people know of his bravery and the injustice. People who have lived to read, to write, accounts of this battle later, they have not mentioned him. I don't know if that's fair, and he didn't live to tell his story. And other things like you have mentioned about, about the doctor, the regimental medical officer, Bakar Ali.
Yes, Muhammad Bakar Ali.
Yeah. His story is also not known.
He was incidentally, Sandeep, he was incidentally Indo-Ceylon boxing champion in his younger days when he was in college. And also the fact that this gentleman, he converted first Sikh wrestlers into boxers and our boxing team became famous within a year of his taking over as RMO and that the wrestlers of the battalion.
A very, very colorful gentleman, and no doubt that's why he was so loved by the men.
Yes.
No doubt. And the other thing you have done, sir, you have the record straight on the withdrawal sequence from battalion command post at Mila. So all these days the records were erroneous of that Delta Company covered as the rear guard till 2300 So that's a very important thing you have put on record, sir. That it was Alpha Company, the sequence wise they came last, following battalion headquarters. Preceded by Charlie. Yeah. Thanks a lot, sir. Posterity will forever be thankful to you. We cannot thank you enough. And you are a soldier of Bumla, of one Sikh, and we have you with us. That experience itself, हमारे जो viewers हैं उनके लिए, it will be a great later day, sir, that we have you with us, and we can't thank you enough. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.